It's 6 p.m. on a Monday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Here are the headliners for today. The top office gives a preview of President Park's National Assembly message set for Tuesday. At the heart of it, security and the economy, reminding lawmakers to put the well-being of the public above all else. There's mounting evidence that North Korea used revenue generated from its workers at the joint factory park in Kaesong for weapons development. The latest testimony show the communist regime swiped more than 70% of employees' wages to support its growing arsenal. Korean and Japanese shares bounced back after posting sharp losses and activating circuit breakers even last week, while the Chinese yuan hit its strongest level yet this year. Let's start here in Korea. A push to increase their nuclear arsenal has been raised once again at the nation's parliament. In a speech, the floor leader of ruling party called for Korea's own nuclear armament to be better prepared against North Korea's provocations. Shin Se-min has our top story.
The first ever address to the assembly was a memorable one, as the ruling Saenuri Party's floor leader pressed the need for South Korea's own nuclear program. Speaking before the assembly, the ruling camp's floor leader Won Yu-chol pointed the finger at North Korea for the security crisis on Korean peninsula, saying it is about time the South builds up a safety breakwater composed of peaceful security weapons. One added that Seoul should re-examine its own nuclear armament or rearrange U.S. tactical nuclear weapons to boost the nation's self-defense.
We cannot borrow an umbrella from a neighbor every time it rains. We need to have a raincoat and wear it ourselves.
Referring to the nuclear umbrella Washington has provided since pulling its tactical nuclear weapons from the South back in 1991, one reiterated that denuclearization efforts should be considered meaningless now. One's remarks are resonating with some conservative South Koreans as they wish to set up Seoul's own nuclear program in response to Pyongyang's continued provocations, a fourth nuclear test, and recent long-range missile launch. Following the address to the assembly, the ruling camp chairman Kim Moo-sung was adamant that one's personal opinion did not reflect the party's stance on the issue of South Korea developing its own nuclear armament. Floor leaders addressing the parliament isn't an unusual scene, but this time around more attention is being paid as it follows the recent provocations by the North, raising anticipation as to what the main opposition party's floor leader will address a day after President Park Geun-hye's speech to the parliament on Tuesday. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye will address the National Assembly this week on North Korea's recent provocative acts and the state of the local economy. She will also urge lawmakers to do more to help the people. Song Ji-sun fills us in.
안보와 경제는 국가를 지탱하는 두 축인데 지금 우리는 이 두 가지가 동시에 위기를 맞는 비상 상황에 직면해 있는 것입니다.
South Korea is facing a diverse series of challenges. On the security front, Seoul has to deal with an aggressive North Korea, which conducted two major provocations in the space of a month. In terms of economic challenges, South Korea is in a period of slowing growth and uncertainty. These issues will likely make up the core of President Park's message to the National Assembly on Tuesday. Since taking office, President Park has visited Parliament every year for the fiscal budget, but this is the first time she's paying a visit for a different occasion. Under Korea's constitution, the president can request to make a verbal or written statement at the assembly. On Tuesday, national unity will likely be the buzz phrase.
President Park will stress the importance of national unity to prevent further provocations from the North and to ease the concerns of the people. She will also emphasize the responsibility of lawmakers during difficult times like this. The president will call on them to promptly pass pending bills on labor reforms, anti-terrorism, and North Korean human rights.
Her message has been consistent, calling on lawmakers to put the people's well-being before their party's interests.
우리 국가와 국민들의 지금 가장 시급한 것은 국회와 정치권이 국민들과 국가의 안위를 위해 모든 정쟁을 내려놓고 테러 방지법을 긴급 의제로 국회를 개회해서 통과시켜야 할 것입니다. 그렇지 않으면 국제사회의 경고에도 불구하고 무리한 도발 행위를 하는 예측 불가능한 북한에 우리 국민들의 생명과 안위를 내놓는 것이나 다름없게 될 것입니다.
President Park will likely sit down with leaders of rival parties to ask for their joint cooperation and also seek public support for her recent decisions made to increase national security, like reviewing deployment of a U.S. THAAD missile system and holding operations at Kaesong Industrial Complex. 송지선, Arirang News.
South Korea says it has evidence and analysis that show how North Korea has been misusing money earned at the joint Kaesong Industrial Complex. And according to some testimony, the actual wages paid to workers was just a fraction of what they were supposed to get. Kwon So-hwa brings us this report.
6,000 North Korean won, or a little less than $48. That's what North Korean workers at the joint Kaesong Industrial Complex earned, not for a day, but a month. This according to a North Korean defector Monday, who used to be a high-ranking person in the light industry sector. The 64-year-old defector said the regime took all of the around $80 South Korean companies would pay North Korean workers and distributed the equivalent of a bit more than 1 kilogram of rice. This latest testimony appears to be another piece of evidence supporting Seoul's recent announcement that North Korea has been using around 70% of its money from the currently shut down inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex for their nuclear and missile programs. Seoul's Unification Ministry reaffirmed this Monday.
There's always been concern about North Korea's use of money earned from the Kaesong complex. The South Korean government has been tracking and analyzing this through various channels.
The unification spokesperson chose not to elaborate further on the issue, stirring criticism from the media, public, as well as the political arena. At a National Assembly meeting Monday, Unification Minister Hong Yong-pyo had been harshly criticized by lawmakers for not disclosing proof of Pyongyang's money trail, citing security issues. Meanwhile, along with South Korea's suspension of the complex, the government is deliberating more independent sanctions on the north regarding ships coming in and out of North Korea. Seoul's Unification Ministry says, however, that this would only be considered after the UN Security Council's new resolution is adopted. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
Zooming in on national defense situation here in South Korea, focuses on when Seoul and Washington will start talks over THAAD deployment. South Korea's defense ministry says America's criteria will be taken into consideration as U.S. forces in Korea will be operating that American missile defense system. Connie Kim gives us the updates.
The U.S.'s military efficacy will be considered with priority when talks between South Korea and the U.S. start over the deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System on South Korean soil. That's according to South Korean Defense Ministry on Monday, as the two allies are working out to set the details of THAAD talks.
U.S. criteria will be considered a priority when deploying the THAAD system on South Korean soil. This is because the U.S. forces in Korea will be operating the system. The optimal location to counter North Korea's ballistic missiles will be selected.
Calls for the deployment of the U.S. anti-ballistic missile system is gaining momentum, as a South Korean defense chief has made it clear that the government is not considering nuclear arms. A recent survey conducted by Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency and the Korea Broadcasting System also showed that 2/3 of South Korean adults supported that deployment in South Korea. But there have been concerns raised. One is whether the pricey THAAD missile that costs some $9 billion is needed to shoot down a North Korean missile that costs 1/10 of the price. Also, can the THAAD system effectively counter Pyongyang's broad range of ballistic missiles? North Korea is estimated to have some 2,000 ballistic missiles in its arsenal, while one THAAD battery is capable of firing 48 missiles. Overcoming China's resistance is another issue, as a THAAD deployment is likely to be discussed during vice ministerial talks between Seoul and Beijing on Tuesday. When the joint South Korea-U.S. working group convenes to work out details of the THAAD deployment, the most contentious issues will be optimal location and the cost each ally will shoulder. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Staying on that topic, so we've been hearing what South Koreans and American military government officials have to say about that missile system in Korean soil. On one hand, it's a system that could better protect the South from North Korea's nuclear missile threats. But of course, there are voices of concerns and oppositions in and out of the country. Oh Soo-young finds out where the people stand on the deployment decision.
It appears most South Koreans are in favor of placing THAAD, the US ballistic missile defense system, in the country. A survey conducted by Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency and Korea Broadcasting System found more than 2/3 of South Korean adults support the deployment. And the majority support holds true, regardless of their political orientation. Over 82% of ruling party supporters are in favor of the deployment. For the People's Party, it was 64% and 53% for the main opposition, the Minju Party. By age, the level of support is polarized. The younger generation and those 50 or over largely favor the deployment, while people in their 40s are more divided on the matter. Seoul and Washington are due to begin talks on THAAD deployment this week, in response to North Korea's latest long-range missile launch. On inter-Korean relations as a whole, the survey found South Koreans are split between taking a hard and soft-line approach to Pyongyang. Those in favor of a tougher approach want stronger sanctions and would consider military solutions to dismantle North Korea's nuclear program, while 40% prefer to deal with issues through dialogue. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Another month of decline in exports for South Korea. It's a most worrisome trend. According to our Park Ji-won, if the downward slide continues in February, that will mark 14 straight months of decline. Take a look.
The Korea Customs Service says Korea's export volume during the first 10 days of this month posted about $8.7 billion, which is nearly a 30% drop from the same period last year. That's only a record from the first 10 days of this month, so it's too early to predict the final export figure for February. However, if this trend continues, February could see another on-year decline in export volume. This will mean exports have fallen for the 14th straight month since January last year, the longest ever period of decline since figures were first recorded in 1970. Analysts say one of the biggest culprits for the decline are falling global oil prices. Korea's exports in the petrochemical industry saw a double-digit decline last month. Korea's outbound shipments to Middle Eastern oil-producing countries also marked over 30% on-year decrease last month. A slowdown in China, Korea's biggest trade partner, also negatively affected Korea's exports, as Korea's outbound shipments to China in January posted about a 20% on-year decrease. Given the circumstances, the Korean government aims to lessen export dependency on China and diversify by exploring new markets like Iran and Cuba. The government is also planning to announce a whole new set of measures sometime next month to increase exports in the consumer goods industry and decrease dependency on the heavy and petrochemical industry. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
It was a good start to the week for most markets across Asia, with shares rebounding, led by major gains in Japan. Experts say the upward trend may continue, though only temporarily, as concerns continue to linger over slow global growth. Kim Min-ji has the breakdown on how markets fared.
Most markets in Asia climbed during Monday's trade, bouncing back from last week's market rout. In Korea, the benchmark Kospi closed higher on Monday, adding almost 1.5%, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq also gained over 2%. This comes after both indexes plunged Friday, with the secondary bourse shedding 8% at one point, triggering a circuit breaker for the first time in over 4 years. Shares in Japan also rallied, with the Nikkei surging more than 7%, due in part to the dollar's strengthening against the yen. It was able to retrace some of the losses it posted last week, despite reports of its GDP falling 1.4% on year in the fourth quarter. Over in China, the benchmark Shanghai Composite lost about 0.6%, coming off a week-long break for the Lunar New Year holiday. It was better than expected, considering various risks that emerged over the extended holiday period, including North Korea's long-range missile launch. The Chinese currency on Monday also hit its strongest level so far this year on the back of the weak greenback and a stronger central bank midpoint.
Faltering crude oil prices have been a big risk factor, but a recovery in prices, increasing hopes of an end to the price run, and measures to stabilize the markets from central banks around the world will play a positive factor in stock markets.
However, experts say that a rebound is only likely for the short term, as a market rout seen last week was spurned by lingering woes over the global economic slowdown, especially in China. Until such concerns are addressed, market turmoil is likely to appear down the road. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Turning to a different story now, a South Korean military helicopter crashed in the eastern province of Gangwon-do on Monday morning, killing 3 of the 4 soldiers on board. All 4 were rushed to hospitals immediately after the accident, but 3 later died while receiving treatment. The Bell UH-1H Iroquois chopper crashed in a residential area during a flight examination. No civilian injuries or related damages were reported so far. Military officials are investigating the exact cause of the accident. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. For more, tune in at 10 p.m. Korea time.